Welcome to No Ordinary People. I'm Jade, and I'm on a mission to give positivity a voice by sharing stories of everyday people doing extraordinary things. They're a reminder of the power we all have to make the world a better place. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on where we're recording today. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples listening. I acknowledge the ongoing impacts of colonisation, including the ways that First Nations children and young people have been silenced, excluded or punished for their strength and resistance. In this conversation that's about bullying, power and change, we recognise our responsibility to challenge harm, listen deeply and support young people, especially those whose voices have too often been dismissed, to lead safer, fairer communities. Today's guest is Rosie Thomas OAM, co-founder and executive director of Project Rockit, one of Australia's most influential voices in youth-led change. Rosie didn't start Project Rockit as an expert with answers. She started it as a teenager, frustrated by how bullying was being talked about and by how little trust young people were given to shape the solutions. What began with two sisters fresh out of high school has grown into a national movement reaching hundreds of thousands of young people, challenging bullying, hate and discrimination. This is a conversation about listening to young people properly, rejecting simple labels of bullies and victims, and what becomes possible when we stop managing young people and start trusting them to lead change. Welcome to the studio, Rosie.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
Rosie, before Project Rockit existed, you were a teenager navigating school just like everybody else. What were you noticing about bullying? And, what were those formative years like for you?
It obviously really takes me back. It's been nearly 20 years. And I kind of remember high school for me being a little bit like a petri dish, if you like, for culture, for what society could be. And I mean like for absolute better or worse. And I was thinking about this, that yeah, when you see bullying or the social hierarchies that play out, or the labels that exist, or the way that people are mistreated, and it could be because of a lived experience or an identity, or even just the way that banter can go too far, and it can be really hard to put your finger on bullying when it's gaslighting, but ultimately it's culture. And what I saw in those times is when bullying is, when there's a breeding ground for bullying, it's a breeding ground for apathy, for young people who feel like they can't put their hand up, or young people that feel like they can't show who they are and learn to hide who themselves, basically. And, and I saw that. But I also saw, and I think looking back, when I say petri dish, I was probably experimenting a little bit before I even knew that I would create Project Rockit as a young person myself. Because yes, just like I saw bullying and exclusion and power, I also saw how you could manipulate those things for good, right? I also really saw, for example, they say back then, 1 in 4 young Aussies report being bullied, right? In fact, sadly, that's actually still the same statistic today. But when I was in school, do you know what I was really fascinated by? The audience. How do we reach those people? So if 1 in 4 young people are bullied, rather than focus on the victim, so the person who is powerless in that situation, or the perpetrator for whatever reason, how do we target using manipulation of power, using changing culture? How do we make it cool to stand up? And how do we make it not cool to be passive? How do we, move that audience to actually intervene? And I think over the years at school, I didn't always stand up. I wasn't a perfect student. No one is a perfect person. But it was in those times where I felt like I'd won, like the game of high school, when I was able to manipulate the power around me to get my peers on side, to actually show disapproval, to intervene, to stand up for someone, to show empathy, to reach out. And in those moments, there would be a ripple throughout the school, right? Because in those moments, people stop and they listen and like, holy shit, that just got called out. And so I think for my time at school, it was really like building this sort of toolkit of things that young people are already sort of doing, but how do we design it and build it together? That was what really got me excited.
And you talk a little bit about your frustration, in particular, how adults talk about bullying. Can you unpack that a bit for me?
I'm going to start by saying, look, there's a marketing problem. So when I was at school, in fact, Jade, maybe when you're at school as well, we used to have the daggy, like retired old cop come in, right?
Yeah.
And basically he'd come in, he'd stand at the front of the room. You'd be in assembly, like glued to your chair, bored like out of your brains. And he'd stand at the front of the room, waggle his finger at you and basically try and scare the shit out of you. I hope it's okay that I say
Yeah,
like an absolute sailor. Basically try and scare the shit out of you as a motivation to do the right thing, which I don't know about you, especially as a teenager, never worked, right? But more importantly, it was like, actually, we were being underestimated. Like, no one was actually asking us for our opinions. Or we'd hear in the newspapers, young people don't care about the issue of bullying or they don't care about each other. But actually, we really did. We wanted to talk about it. We wanted to tackle the issue. We could see all of the things that I was talking about before playing out. And we actually felt quite powerless. But no one was doing it in a way that was really reaching us. And so I think that's where like this real idea came through that's like, imagine if kind of thing. Like I remember for me, like as you said, I'm glad you said at the start of the intro, I was not an expert, technically speaking. But now 20 years on that we value young people as experts, holy shit, yeah, I was an expert. I had a deep understanding of the issue, personally experiencing it myself, knowing the impact, seeing it in my peers. I knew the problem inside out. But also my sister and I had this really weird, creative way of fixing it. And there was nothing holding us back to just try it, to take it for a spin and just test something completely new that just wasn't going on in schools yet.
So what was that thing? Tell me what was the first ever Project Rockit program, even if it was, not called that at the time? What was that first instance like?
It was called Project Rockit.
It was?
Absolutely. It was called Project Rockit. And essentially, Luce and I guess we kind of came up with this new idea for what we wanted to see at school. And it's been absolutely criticised as totally lofty and idealistic, but we've obviously proven people wrong by now. But basically, Jade, it was that we believed in a world where kindness and respect could thrive over bullying, hate and prejudice, and every young person could be free to realise their potential. And at the time, like now I know the stats as the expert or whatever, but at the time we just saw bullying as robbing young people of their potential, especially having just finished high school ourselves. You see people out the other end of high school, right? Some people are finishing really like happy and confident and ready to take on the world. They know who they are. They're leaders. They're supported. Other young people are empty shells of the amazing kid they were when they started, all because of the way they were treated. Totally preventable. And the way we saw it, it extinguishes their potential. It smothers their development. It smothers their opportunities. And so we, as I said, like we as young people ourselves, we're both very creative. So, I mean, Luce plays every instrument. I'm a singer. We just think a bit differently, very into the arts. And we just thought like, enough. Like we've got to go in and actually be really creative and engage young people. And so we kind of came up with this approach. It's called a show not tell approach, right? The idea that like, Jay, can I ask you, as a 16-year-old in school, I think I know the answer to this. If you were sitting in the hall and the cop came in and said, basically started waggling the finger and telling you, at 16 years old, did you think that I could tell you anything that you didn't already know?
Hell no.
Right?
No. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So like, or just being lazy, like coming in and going like, hey, bullying hurts. Like that's going to motivate you to have empathy for your peers when you see them being targeted. So we decided that we were going to actually take a really fun and interactive but very random and creative approach that when you say to a group of young people still today, like, hey, we're here to talk about bullying, right? Even though you are a credible, cool young person at the front of the room, the eyes roll to the back of their heads because there's a marketing problem.
Yeah.
So we decided that, that we'd instead engage young people by doing things like wild social experiments, for example, that create like a real aha moment in the room. It allows people to, first of all, get up and participate and engage and forget why they're even there in the first place. But we always link the activity or the memorable experience with a very big mic drop aha moment that allows everyone to arrive on the same page, no matter what your status is, your power, whatever you are, who you are at school, to have real talk about that issue. We don't tell, we listen. We ask the right questions. We allow spaces using our incredible young presenters with their lived experience and their diversity, right, to role model what that can look like in the world, right? That school doesn't have to be the kind of place that I was talking about at the beginning.
And I think that I want to talk a little bit about the stats, because you mentioned at the beginning the fact that sadly, like, we haven't moved. So still 1 in 4 young people report being bullied. 7 in 10 children aged 12 to 13 experience at least one bullying-like behaviour every year. Why is this still so persistent? And what have you seen change over the 2 decades that you've been running these programs?
Yeah. All right, how to approach this one. Firstly, let's talk about what bullying is.
Yeah.
Right? Bullying is not a one-off. It's a repeated behaviour. It always involves unfair power. So whether that's a group versus one person, or, a particular power dynamic in the community. And it's also intentional. It's not an accident, right? Despite people might say that. So that's just the definition. I want to start there because people think bullying, and this kills me, is a kid's issue. What happens to kids when they grow up, when they bully others and when they're bullied? But also what happens to young people when they grow up, when they don't know how to stand up, when they feel the regret of not speaking up, right? These are adult issues. Bullying is homophobia, it's ableism, it's racism, it's all of the isms, right? And so, first of all, I just want to acknowledge the climate that young people are growing up in today. Absolutely. I'd hate to borrow a COVID word, but unprecedented crisis that they are inheriting, all playing out in real time on their phones. Now, back to what you were saying. Yeah, the stat hasn't changed, but there has been more intervention. So first of all, reporting is likely increase, which is actually a really fantastic thing. Yeah. So, when we do our workshops in schools, we don't measure our success based on reporting going down because we want it to go up. But the other thing is that despite the fact that there might be awareness or programs, it's only just recently, really in the last year or so, when the government finally did a rapid review around what works in schools, that it was finally acknowledged that actually those assembly talks I was talking about before, or the punishment approach, or sometimes even the really well-meaning teacher-led intervention restorative justice approach, for example, actually can do more harm or just have no impact whatsoever. And so I would argue that, and what we're really trying to do at Project Rockit, it's not just deliver the programs in schools ourselves, it's really build the understanding of what works when it comes to reaching young people on these issues. It's not just about having an evidence-based program, and I'm just going to throw some of the curriculum-aligned, evidence-based. No. It's about lived experience. It's about giving young people an opportunity to shape it with you. So co-designing. It's about young people seeing themselves in the content. It's about diversity. So it's about recognizing that, especially when it comes to bullying, the intersection of culture or faith or all plays such a big role. And so it's about not whitewashing bullying or adult washing it, and instead kind of divesting that power, which is really tricky to do. We've obviously built a model that can enable that, but that's what I think is really missing. And as you said, 20 years, enough is enough.
You talk, we've touched on kind of youth-driven rather than youth-focused. I want to explain the difference. So, because many people listening might not know that nuanced difference. And why does that matter?
Oh, good question. Well, I'd love to throw that back at you, but I will answer first because I'm the guest. All right. So youth-focused versus youth-driven. I would say youth-focused, again, is a great step in the right direction. It's very well intended. Youth-focused is designing stuff for young people. Youth-driven is designing it with young people, but then going a step further and giving it to them to deliver, essentially. And I think that's, again, why we worked essentially from the very beginning, Jade, because let me tell you, we had every barrier against us as 2 young people starting out. No experience, no help, no support, no we had to convince teachers there should be anti-bullying programs in schools and that they shouldn't be the ones running them, that it should be young people and that they had to pay to have them.
Yeah.
It was a big ask. But when they saw the impact and when they trusted and they divested that power, and God, our workshops are way better than they were back then, you could see the change, right? It's not even just about young people having a tokenistic involvement in it. It's about actually them delivering it at Project Rockit, whether it's our online content, the incredible campaign work we do. Young people don't just design it They film it. We'll build their technical capabilities to be influencers for good. They're filming themselves. They are the stars of it. They are the ambassadors. When the media picks it up, they're the spokespeople. Now, of course, that requires a lot of capability building.
Yeah.
But that's the best bit of all of it.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the impact? So, what students are reporting and what are the metrics of success? Because, things in sort of confidence and self-awareness and, for people to stand up and support. Like, can you talk about some of the positive impacts that you've seen over the years and what the data's telling you about why this works?
Yeah, for sure. One of the big questions that we asked ourselves as young people when we started that I think we all need to continue to ask today is, like, how can we expect young people to stand up if they don't know what they stand for? Because the stakes are so high. We know what it's like as adults to intervene when you hear a racist conversation.
Yeah.
Right? The stakes are so high. But so we start with ourselves, we start with young people. It's about, and really creatively and collectively as a peer community, working out who each person is. We're not all going to stand for everything. So really it's about like ethics. It's your values. It's which most people don't get to. Some people get to their 50s and they learn this stuff. We're teaching it in schools because this is the kind of capability building that sets young people up to be confident, to be leaders, essentially, to back themselves, but also what we see from a mental health perspective as well, the outcomes, what that means when young people have agency, when they are contributing to, when they know that their voice matters, when they know that they're actually shaping a community around them. And it's not all utopia. Like, we're never going to get rid of bullying. That's not the point. No school will not have it. The idea is that we're building a generation of young people that know who they are, know what world they want to live in, have some tools and some strategies and a bit of a network and a peer community, whether it's at their school or online, that when they see this stuff happen, they're ready, that they shut it down.
You mentioned the word leadership, so I actually want to kind of divert a little bit and talk about your leadership journey, because I know you've talked, especially in in the early years when you were straight out of high school with your sister and going into these very kind of archaic and adult environments, almost like going back into the school environment when you've sort of come out of that as a student. I don't necessarily want to project, but that sort of imposter syndrome, or how have you navigated that as a young woman and now over 2 decades? What's that leadership journey been like for you? And what are some lessons for other young people who want to go from, caring about something to being an upstander?
Oh, I'm really going to have to sift through and filter because I have so much to say on the topic. I'm so passionate about it. Part of me can disembody and rise above and actually just see little Rosie. It actually makes me emotional because I almost see her as a different person and my sibling as well. And I think looking back, just the sheer audacity we had to start this thing. And again, let me be clear, we had no ambition for this success. We didn't think it would work, basically.
Yeah.
So the bar was very low. But just that sheer audacity to give it a crack. And I think in a way the bar being low was such an enabler for us both because no one was watching, no one was caring. There was no other organisations to look at, to copy or to compare ourselves to. There was no social media. Well, it was in nappies at the time. But so, yeah, I think looking back, I think one of the biggest challenges, confidence has always been my challenge, which I think a lot of the time people find that really surprising. But when you're always on the forefront of flying the plane and building at the same time, leaping without the net, you're just constantly exposed. And so when you're good, when you're mentally well, when you're feeling strong, you've got great relationships or whatever, you can show up and you can feel like you can bring that into spaces, especially spaces where you're testing an idea with, I'm going to say, one of the toughest audiences, teenagers and primary school kids. But when things aren't great or whatever in your life, it is just so hard to show up. And I'd say over the years, it's been 20 years. And so there have been so many evolutions. The last 3 years have been becoming a mum and that lens just changing everything for the issues that we address. Also trying to work out who I am and how I can lead and trying to join back into the workforce, and yet still with this enduring purpose. I guess my message to young people, because today I work with lots of young people. We've employed over 150 young people, but even mentoring young change makers, the bar is so high. I see the pressure for them to have the most innovative idea that's polished and all worked out. And my biggest idea is like, don't, because the innovation comes from the scarcity. It's about getting it out there, getting it out of your head, people shaping it with you. And I think that's what grows confidence over time. And I think, that is the pressure for young people today, is that there are these amazing initiatives out there, but it doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity for another way. Like, there are unique change makers in this world of all ages. They could be 2 years old, so look out for your kid, that can spot things, right? They can see the problem and they can see the answer before anyone else can. And we want to direct them to the social issues, the environmental issues, because we need them more than ever, I think.
I completely agree. I think I saw an amazing show. I think it was either, it wasn't Current Affair, it was on the ABC. And there was a panel of young people, most of them either in high school or university, and they were being asked subjects, very politically driven subjects. And the answers coming out, I was literally like, move everybody along and let these guys into government. Like, they were so passionate, they were so clear, articulate, they had such unique perspectives on things and were so much more empathetic than my generation growing up. And it gave me hope, and I'm always looking for those signals of hope, because in this world it is hard to find hope. So bring on the young people, bring on the new perspectives. We're all about that. In your leadership journey, so obviously in any organization, when you go from startup through to now, a very well recognized, very respected organization, what were some of the pivotal turning points for you? Do you know what they were, or is it just cumulative over time? Or were there some key moments that you're like, oh, okay, we've just stepped up?
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. So, started out just Luce and I'm going to call it a side hustle.
Yeah.
Right? We had every job under the sun. I was a bloody softball coach. I worked in and I did it all. Babysitter, tour guide. Like, I did everything. We're just doing this thing on the side. It started to grow, and it grew and it grew. And actually, I remember it got to a point, and let me tell you, it grew very slowly. This is again, wasn't our ambition, but it was just working. And I think it actually, it filled me with fear. I'm not going to lie, Jay, because I remember at one point going, oh my God, we've created something that we cannot stop. We actually can't. And so many people said to us, oh, this is just Lucy and Rosie. You're just great public speakers, or how do you do that? That's you're engaging young people because it's a magic that you have. And we knew that it wasn't. And yet at the same time, we were trying to build the model as well. And so, I think maybe 4 years in, 5 years in, we're just a little business, right? Getting schools to pay, essentially. We really recognized that we needed to, we're going to go in, all in, dig in, we're going to do it. And that's when we started hiring. And it was so hard back then, Jade. There was no, we didn't know how to find our people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Now today, there are so many fantastic organizations like Project Rockit. I'll name drop them all later because they're amazing. But we just share stuff. There's this is a role, right? A program presenter in schools. But back then, to find the right people, but also to build the ship while you're flying it, right? So we had to build HR, we had to build everything. I remember we used to have this little flip phone. Do you remember flip phones?
The Nokia ones, or
this was
even pre-Nokia.
Yeah, what was it? Hello Moto.
Hello Moto.
Yeah,
Motorola. Yeah.
And we called it Bosley, which was Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
But we'd be in schools running the programs, and then at lunch we'd be someone would have Bosley, and you'd be on the phone trying to book in. You're trying to work out marketing. We're doing everything. And so anyway, I'd say 5 years in, it was about hiring. And that just completely changed everything, because the minute we got more identities, more hands, the impact, because you can just reach more people more deeply. And I don't even mean by scale, I mean identity-wise. So, but also, I'd say, partnerships have been a really massive, massive part of our journey. Just to name, and then I'll hit pause because I'll just rant and rave at you, Jay. But just to name that, we do what we Project Rockit is a social enterprise. And so when we started, people are like, are you not a not-for-profit? We have a not-for-profit, yes, now. But actually at the time, we're like, do you know what? When I was bloody 20 years old or 19, the only not-for-profit I knew was like World Vision. So we didn't even, we didn't see that as agile and innovative or whatever, but also we didn't think we could be that. And we didn't know if it was going to work. So that's why we got people to pay, just to see if they'd buy it again. That was our evaluation. But I think that's meant our growth was very small. It also meant that we got really good at what we did, right? But, we didn't receive any funding. We didn't have any support really until about 2012. And it was actually when Facebook moved to Melbourne, to Australia, and set up a physical presence and made a decision then and there when they launched their Be Bold, Stop Bullying campaign, which now is quite interesting, was backed by Julia Gillard actually at the time. And instead of choosing the large national anti-bullying charity, they chose to work with us, there was 3 of us at the time, this grassroots organisation, I should say, of young people, because they were just like, whoa. They could recognise how we could sort of do it. And so I think from then on, that was 2012. And from then on, I mean, our partnerships are such an enormous part of what we do, which we'll probably get into later. So I'll hit pause on that one.
That's a good segue into the Project Rockit Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit of the difference between the foundation and the social enterprise Project Rockit?
For sure, yeah. So Project Rockit Foundation exists to exclusively support young people who just too often fall through the cracks. We support young people facing marginalisation, so LGBTIQA youth, First Nations, culturally and linguistically diverse young people, regional, remote, rural young people that are in schools that are in really low socioeconomic areas that just do not have access to the kind of programs and support and opportunities that we believe that every young person should have, no matter what their background or postcode is. And the reality is, Jade, we realised, actually it was during COVID where we were very lucky to survive as an organisation, Melbourne school-based youth mental health organisation, like many in the sector, that there was a real problem. You mentioned before that stat, cyberbullying complaints to the e-safety office had tripled, since pre-pandemic. We've got, 10,000 schools in Australia and almost half identify as disadvantaged.
That is crazy.
So that's low SES, but it's also because this country is just so vast. So, it's regional, rural and remote. And it means that if you are in one of those areas, not only are you not getting access to some of the things that we know work that I just spoke about before, so evidence-based, youth lived experience, all of that sort of stuff, you don't have access to anything. And so like mental health support, you don't, public transport, the costs to bring them in is so enormous. And I think we got to this point with Project Rockit where we were really scaling. We're in every state where, we're working with a couple of thousand students a week. We're building out our models. We're doing all these things. But ultimately, we needed to reach the young people who needed our help the most. And do you know how you need to get there? Philanthropy. That's how you get there. That, we had been bootstrapping this thing for years, even being a youth employer without any philanthropic support. I can't believe we've done it, but we still do it. We've got our corporate, partnerships, but really this is the incredible role that philanthropy play, because those schools don't just need like a quick fix, a 90-minute workshop. They need wraparound support. It's about bringing the parents and carers in. It's about equipping the educators in the school, supporting them first and foremost. This is a burnt out, absolute staff shortages. These schools are spending their budgets, their wellbeing budgets on like relief teachers. Right? Yeah. Food, clothing. We do needs assessments with our all of our schools. We've now got 150 schools on our wait list of schools that are high need all over Australia, urgently seeking this support. And the data, it's not the data, it's the commentary. These schools, they are crying out for help. They've got chronic school refusal. They've got spiking mental health. It's just, it's the demand is very bleak. And so, Project Rockit Foundation really exists to just exclusively bring the gift that is Project Rockit. We throw everything that we can at these schools with philanthropy support.
And if there is a philanthropist out there who's keen to get involved, like what is the size of the problem? So 150 schools on the wait list currently.
Yeah.
And in terms of, a funding number to actually be able to serve those communities and those schools, what does it take?
Well, 1.2 million would wipe out the whole wait list. And just to describe exactly what that is, it's dispatching our team, so 2 teams of young people out into the schools to work within the community, running the face-to-face workshops with students. It is plugging the school into our online platform that has been, again, designed by young people for young people, that houses all their youth design content, because that's the problem, is that not only do you need to leave things behind to equip the school, so we leave them for 12 months with this, we really embed it, but it still needs to be youth voiced. And so that's why you really need this content. Like when you're talking about issues like consent, right?
Yeah.
Teachers,
very topical, right?
Very topical. And do you know what? A lot of teachers feel very compromised talking about that. So we, all of this content is curriculum aligned. So it's the job that they need to be doing, but they don't know how to do it. So we set them up, but we also run like quarterly parent workshops. Like we just did one recent, I think it was a couple of nights ago, that we had like 800 parents from a community, which to get 800 parents to turn up, I can't tell you, is an achievement. And it was all about like digital hygiene and sleep. And it's working, it's young people sharing their experiences, but we also partner with our expert community as well.
I'm really interested as well in the role. So obviously we've talked a little bit about the, being youth kind of created and youth led. I want to touch on your youth council, like your advisory council, because I had the privilege of meeting some of your sort of teammates and some of those that work on those programs or within it yesterday. And oh my God, well, what amazing humans. Can you tell me a little bit about who they are, how you find them? What does a day look like for them? How are they contributing to the future?
Oh, feel like I'm going to proud mother over you. So first of all, as I said in the beginning, Project Rockit was always youth design by young people for young people. Of course, then we started hiring young people, and Luce and I got old.
Yeah,
basically, right. And so the model has always been, recruiting and training up, and they're not always the put your hand up in class captain people. Actually, most often they're not. And we find them and we train them up, and not just build their incredible public speaking and facilitating like Brene Brown, eat your heart out, but we build their toolkit of understanding neurodiversity, understanding identity, and really supporting them to go into schools and have the really, really tough conversations. So they're our staff. They're 18 to 25. But 5 or 6 years ago, we also started to really recognize that even 18 to 25 was too old. At the same time, our programs, you need 18 to 25. In fact, 18 and 19, I'll tell you, as an 18, 19-year-old, working with a bunch of year 10 guys talking about misogyny, the back sweat that I had, the adrenaline, it wasn't safe for me. It was fine. I was the founder, but that's important that we have that sort of just out of school role model, safety, respect type scenario. But we really wanted to make sure that it was young people driving that change, and not 16 to 25, 12 actually. Yeah. So we actually have a national youth collective who steer the entire direction of the organisation, but they're not just, I think their motto is they call themselves, they say, we actually do shit, because there's a lot of advocacy out there, and that's fantastic that we're now listening to young people. But so often it's just a bit of a talk fest, essentially. What our young people do, there's 50 of them aged 12 to 20. They serve as co-designers. So, these guys are designing for Meta, Melbourne University. They're doing co-research projects. They're appearing on CNN. They're in Senate hearings talking about the social media ban, their own lived experience on, in Parliament House, where, essentially really building up their capabilities to shape the systems that influence their lives the most. So, we sit on the global safety boards of a number of different organisations, platforms that need to be safer for young people. So platforms like Meta, or Spotify, or Snap. And our role is to really serve as a conduit. So we sit on that board, but we make sure that young people's, views, their lived experiences, their voices and their ideas are really invested. And we're ruthless about that. Smiling assassins, of course.
Love that. How does that engagement? So you do the work with them in a safe space, and then you then work with the corporate partner on taking those learnings, those insights, and incorporating it into that brand's whatever that work might look like, right? Is that how it works? So they're not actually in there in front of the corporates. They are working with you in that safe space to have the voice come through you.
Yeah, so it's not like a corporate sweatshop.
Yeah.
And for that very reason, we actually we're very selective about who we work with.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we're influencing the right system. So we want to be clear. But within that system, we want to make sure that, for example, we have an independence clause. No matter who we work with, they know that we're going to call them out. And I will say, without naming names, that the people within those companies, when we have publicly called them out, have thanked us for doing so. So that is very, very important. But what we're really talking about here is like over the last 20 years, and it's not me doing this, we have an amazing team of like legit experts that are young people. We've built a model, a participation model. So even things like, of course, young people are paid. You know, we've got 13-year-olds that have LinkedIn accounts that they're at Project Rockit, and they're getting even more amazing paid work as a result of that. They're finding their voice, they're finding their community, and they're actually getting to shape some of these systems. So a lot of the resources that we create, they're Project Rockit resources, but they might be targeting a specific issue that is really relevant to a platform, like intimate image abuse, you know, something like that. So yeah, they're not necessarily working face to face, but they're absolutely designing everything. They can veto whatever they want. They have full power to. The people that we work with, our process, we absolutely have a process, but it can be hard to understand sometimes that actually it's about going in and, you know, putting some gutter guards around things, but ultimately seeing where it goes and divesting power at the end of the day, which can be challenging for some.
There's so many kind of nuances in there that I'm fascinated by. I think, you know, and I love the fact that the partners that you've specifically called out, that you can call them out, right? So, you know, a really respectful relationship with a partner is based on transparency, trust, and really clear guardrails, right? Yeah. That's what keeps it authentic. That's what stops it from being tokenistic. So for any partners or any corporate or brands out there that are looking to start engaging with youth voices or being really considerate about how they engage with this audience, how do you set up the guardrails, the scaffolding, so it isn't tokenistic, so it is a really kind of authentic and valuable exchange for that partner? So I'll name drop sort of one of your partners that I know of, Telstra. And can you maybe talk a little bit about how, because I know they've got a council that I believe some of your young people sit on. I'm really interested in how is that done in a non-tokenistic way?
Great question. So we love Telstra, just hand on heart. we've you know, I said before, no one backed us. Actually, we received our first funding ever from the Telstra Foundation, and we were the tiny kids that got it. They really backed us. We've worked with them now for 12 years.
Amazing.
Actually. And at a really large scale and doing real work, like out in schools, all over regional Australia, basically. So incredibly rich and trusted partnership. Telstra Foundation, they're leaders in this work, and they recognise that they're like, yeah, we want young people steering us too, but we don't know how to do it. And so we've essentially designed, and now we manage, and eventually we'll hand it over when it's ready, their Youth Advisory Council. So they've got a national youth collective, basically, but it's all geared towards the Telstra Foundation, the issues that are really important to them. The outcomes have been phenomenal. And I mean, what would I say to brands out there? We've also got other relationships where now brands, instead of spending their marketing budgets on brand ambassadors and young actors that are appearing in things, they're actually investing their money into our National Youth Collective so that they can co-create real storytelling, meaningful lived experience storytelling around this content, and then us pushing it out into the right communities. And we're actually really developing a proof point behind that actually that's what lands, and that the return on that investment is incredible. Plus, the brand is actually living what they say they're doing because the impact is profound. And so, that's sort of what we're doing at the moment. We've got a huge part of our organisation, I'd say a third of our work, Launchpad it's called, a third of our work is working with government, corporates, community organisations, universities to help them build out certain projects. As I said, it could be a brand campaign, it could be research, whatever it is.
Fantastic. I mean, it's just so innovative. I can just see your creativity in there. I want to talk a little bit about what happens, what you hear when it's really working. So I love like anecdotal stories. So is it, from a particular school that maybe was going through a really tough time and has seen a real tangible change and a shift in the attitudes of their young people? But I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of tell one of your favourite stories.
Oh, I've just got so many little ones, I think. Like the first thing that popped into my head was a comment. It was on a Slack channel just the other day, so that's why it's popped into my head. It came through from our school engagement team who work with the teachers, who said, I cannot fathom this. The boy who sits at the back of the class and looks like he's sleeping was actually performing at the front of the room. And that's wild. Like, and let me tell you, he would have been actually performing, because it's a bit weird what we do. But just like to show that, I mean, that leap is huge. And you don't know what that guy's carrying when he walks in every morning. Has he had breakfast? Is there family violence at home? Like, what is going on? Is he being bullied? So like just little moments like that. Or I hear from the National Youth Collective, Theo, amazing young people. I think she said, Project Rockit turned my voice into an instrument of change. And I could cry hearing that. I didn't think people cared what I thought, and I didn't think anyone would listen. So I didn't have anything to say. And over that time of working, and as I said, like, Dan, who runs our National Youth Collective, I think he meets with them all weekly. Like, it's incredible what they're building, this community. They've started their own projects. A couple of them have gone off and done projects together. It's just incredible. So there's just a couple of little sound bites that kind of stand out. One more, actually, because this one, it just really, really stays with me. And I'll try not to get emotional. But excuse me.
Emotion is good.
Yeah.
It shows you're human.
I've got plenty of that. But the quote was from a 20-year-old who had Project Rockit 4 years ago. So don't know how they'd even remember, but they did. And they said, I know a few people who've lost their lives to cyberbullying, and if Project Rockit was in their school, they might still be with us today.
Yeah. Oh, God. Well, you have done an incredible, especially when you consider the fact that it was a side hustle, you went on this journey with your sister, 20 years later, you're a mum. I mean, you've got to look back and be proud. I hope you do. I hope you take stock, because I can see how driven you are, and I know how driven you are. And I'm sure you're always, next star. But I think it's really important that, people that hear your story just thank you, because there are probably thousands of stories like that of lives that you've changed that haven't emailed you or haven't told you. So on behalf of all young Australians, I say thank you.
Thank you.
What do the next 10, 20 years look like for Project Rockit? Where do you want it to go? Big question. But, what do you see for the future?
Oh, yeah. Well, this year, Project Rockit turns 20. The baby. I honestly, I think, I say, like, I didn't think I could get a room to listen to us back then. And now we're going to reach 1 million young people this year, which is 10 MCGs worth on grand final day. If you can visualize the MCG, 10 of those is the number of young people that we've impacted. What does the next 10 to 20 years look like? Look, I don't know. I will say it's about passing on the baton, not just me personally, but all of us. It's about, handing over. I know there's so much fear and so much apprehension. We just want to protect young people, but we're wrapping them in cotton wool. It's not helping them. It's, they're not developing their character, their resilience, but also they are the leaders. They have the answers. Only a few people backed us. I don't know why we kept going, but look what we were able to create. We can do this on a national and a global scale if we back young people. And I think I just want to see more of that happening, not just in schools, but in governments, online. I want to see young people on the TV sharing their expert opinion, on Sky News or whatever it might be. That's what I want to see.
Oh. How can anyone listening stand alongside those young people with you, not speak over them, not speak about them? So how can every single Australian just be more empathetic, supportive and empowering for the young people in their lives?
Well, that's just a big question to end with, but I'll give it a crack. I think if we're listening out there, you're listening, you're probably thinking of a young person in your mind. And I think what motivates you when it comes to this young person is probably an enormous amount of love and respect and all sorts of other things that we might not think about in the very little moments. I think what we need to do with young people and what we're trying to do at Project Rockit is ignite bravery in young people. And we don't do that by having all the answers. We don't do that by telling them what to do. We do that by sitting in the mud with them, sitting in the mess and just letting them navigate it and being their cheerleader, and then just giving them a massive pat on the back when they make the hardest decision and they stand up, or whether they put themselves out there. And I think, like, in a world that just feels more increasingly digital, I want to remind parents it's still not. It's still social. All the shit we're seeing play out online, it's still social. And so you might not be an expert of technology, but you're an expert at being a human in the sense that you've grown up. So I think, like, you know, try and lean into the moment, and I think join this movement of just igniting bravery in young people and in the next generation.
I think that's a perfect place to, that's handing over the baton, right? Like, we're now calling on everyone to stand up and to, I love that, sit in the mud with them, give them the space and trust that they have the answers. They know what's right for them. I've loved this. I've just loved this.
Sit and talk.
I know. We've got to wrap it up because I don't think people will listen to our podcast.
Wind it up.
But I absolutely appreciate you coming in today. We at Unlimited are so absolutely thrilled to be working with you. Such a huge fan of your work. Long may it continue. And just a note, I'll put all of the show notes. I'll put all of the contacts in the show notes. So I'll put links in there to both Project Rockit and the foundation. If there is anyone that wants to step up and take some of those schools off the waiting list, that is definitely something that we would encourage. So I will end by saying a big, massive thank you. And we out.
We out.
We out.
Need more light in your feed? Follow and share. Be part of the movement to bring the balance back.